people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The reigning undisputed women's middleweight champion Claressa Shields stated LOL at Boxer and Ben Shalom. They're pissed. They put all that money behind Savannah Marshall, convinced that she would beat me. Now she lost, and all the belts are right here in America. Y'all have to come to America. Had a chance to get them now, I'd be pissed too. Hashtag GWOAT.
Been talking about this a lot the last couple of days.
How it ain't wrong for Claressa to want to do the fight in America now that she won the first one. If they want to do a second one, it should be in Claressa's neck of the woods.
Been talking about this a lot the last couple of days.
Now, while that's not an outlandish request, it's understandable why Claressa would want to do the second fight here. Who here is going to pay for it? Because Claressa,
She ain't with a network in America. Neither is Dimitri Salita, her longtime promoter.
fairly confident that neither Claressa Shields or Savannah Marshall want to fight for peanuts on a dollar here in America or anywhere else on the planet. But without network money to bankroll the fight, who's supposed to pay for it? Who's supposed to pay the fighters?
They could stick it on pay-per-view. They can do it on Fight TV like they did the DCare fight.
Oh, you mean the Marie-Eve DeCare fight that didn't sell anything? Let me tell you something. Major networks are struggling to sell pay-per-views right now. Major networks like Showtime are battling piracy and waning interest in the sport here in the American market.
Thus, the idea that you could do Shields versus Marshall 2 here in America in the hopes that the money would come from the pay-per-view?
What, the upside of a pay-per-view?
Yeah, right.
Claressa continued, I said what I said, now take that loss and run it back in the United States or shut your trap.
I don't know if Claressa has any understanding of the sports infrastructure and how things work, what it would take to make the fight in the United States.
I don't know, but what I do know is neither one of these fighters want to fight on the cheap. Neither Claressa or Savannah want to fight for peanuts on the dollar. You may not get in America what you got for that fight with that same fighter in the UK.
You might not.
A Twitter user that goes by the name DU365 said, Raquel Miller, was on the Boxing Voice podcast having diarrhea of the mouth, claiming the quote doesn't want to see her or she'd send a contract over.
To which Claressa Shields replied, LOL, Dimitri Salita sent Raquel and her team 2 contracts to fight, and they said no.
And Claressa's not lying. I don't think she is. I vaguely recall an interview that Raquel Miller conducted a couple of years ago with Fred Hawthorne of Barbershop Conversations. And in so many words, what she said was, Claressa did send her an offer more than once.
But it was for peanuts.
I believe that interview was circa 2020.
Around there, but she did admit Claressa made her an offer. It's just that the money wasn't no good.
Claressa herself stated, y'all know why me and Raquel ain't fought in the pros yet? She turned down 2 contracts to fight against me. That's why. And now she ain't got no belts, but still lying, saying I'm ducking her. Stop the motherfucking cap.
I don't think Claressa's ducking Raquel Miller. I don't think Claressa's ducking anybody, really.
But I do think this speaks to the problem I've been addressing in reference to the Marshall rematch and doing it here in America as opposed to there in the UK again.
It's the same problem.
Now, when Claressa made those 2 offers to Raquel Miller to do a fight with her, she was likely still with Showtime at the time, but she's not with them anymore.
Yeah, that relationship ended over a year ago.
No network money that I know of behind Claressa Shields in the United States. The guys who made the fight possible, the fight between her and Savannah Marshall, they're in the UK. That's Sky Sports money, Boxer money.
She doesn't want to go back to the UK.
She doesn't have to. You can make the argument that she doesn't need a Savannah Marshall rematch. She doesn't actually need a second fight. Savannah does. You can make that argument, but irrespective of that argument, who's gonna pay for Claressa's fights moving forward, irrespective of Savannah Marshall?
Never mind Savannah. Skip Savannah.
If you wanted to do a fight between Claressa and Raquel, who's gonna pay for it?
Dimitri Salita does not have a broadcast partner. He doesn't have a network relationship with any network in America.
On what platform would you do the fight? Whose money would you use to bankroll it? And would it be enough to satisfy the financial demands of the fighters? Because I reiterate, I'm pretty sure Clarissa don't want to fight for peanuts on a dollar, and neither does Raquel. Not for what's supposed to be an undisputed middleweight title fight.
Raquel Miller, who's got a fight coming up next month on the 10th.
She's supposed to be fighting Karen Avila for what is a WBC international title.
Raquel and Clarissa, they're arch rivals, and their rivalry goes back to their days as amateurs.
They're both unbeaten fighters as professionals, though Raquel is several years older than Clarissa Shields. Time ain't on her side the way it's on Clarissa's.
So in any event, if you wanted to do a fight between them,
who's gonna pay for it? What promoter's gonna bankroll it? What promoter's gonna promote it? And on what platform would it air?
and this is the problem, the same problem with doing a Shields versus Marshall rematch in America is the same problem Clarissa would face doing almost any fight in America.
It's the same thing. Clarissa Shields says that, Ben Shalom and Boxer, they're so mad they invested all that money in Savannah Marshall.
But are they?
Even if the Shields rematch don't happen for Savannah, there are other fights they can make, like an Aline Cedar-Ruse fight, a Christina Hammer fight, a Hannah Gabriel's fight, a Raquel Miller fight.
They can pay for all of those fights just as easily as they paid you.
For Savannah, Clarissa ain't the only game in town. Moreover, Savannah's not limited to fighting Clarissa if she wants an alphabet title. She can move up in weight, move up to super middleweight, and challenge Franchon Cruz for all of her belts.
They can pay for that fight just as easily as they paid you.
Those fighters would be willing to travel, given the financial incentive, as they might make more money boxing Savannah Marshall in the UK than they'd stand to make boxing you in the US.
Because she still has a network behind her.
It's not my imagination. The disconnect here, the misconception, is that somehow Savannah Marshall is limited to pursuing a Clarissa Shields fight when there are many other fights she can pursue at or around these weights.
That because she lost, she's up the creek without a paddle, she still has a network behind her that can bankroll many other fights, not exclusive to this one.
So, who needs who? That's the question. For Clarissa Shields to make what she made with Savannah Marshall, who else can she fight?
Who in America, since she don't want to go to the UK?
It's a legitimate question, because if Clarissa don't book a boxing match sometime in the near future, she'll likely go all in into the PFL.
She does have a deal with them.
And they have a network deal with ESPN.
But that's for MMA, not boxing.
So you see the situation. There's a genuine question there. What's the play moving forward to bankroll Clarissa's boxing matches in America?
That's a question that needs an answer.
In other news, in men's 136-pound news, not to be confused with lightweight news or super lightweight news, Ryan Garcia stated they always use title fights as something. Titles stopped meaning something a long time ago. And Ryan talks like he's earning more money than a titleist doing what he's doing. He's acting like he's earning the kind of money that Tyson Fury made with Deontay Wilder when he isn't. The kind of money that Alexander Usyk made opposite the ring Anthony Joshua 2 times. Those were title fights.
Those are world titleists.
And they all make more money than Ryan Garcia. They've all fought on bigger stages than Ryan Garcia. Ryan talks like he's making Canelo Alvarez money.
And look at all the titles he's picked up in 4 weight classes.
He's not making Canelo Alvarez money. That's the funny part.
The common denominator between all these guys throughout all these weight classes is that they're all world titleists. Unlike Ryan Garcia, who seems to think that world titles, they don't matter. But those world titles are the common denominator in the biggest fights. The biggest fights historically, and the biggest fights in the sport here and now.
World titles matter, just not to Ryan Garcia, which is fine for him. He seems to think that...
He thinks that world titles stopped meaning something a long time ago.
Likely because what's supposed to be his upcoming fight with Gervonta Davis, it's not for a full-fledged title, you understand. It's not for a full-fledged world title. Yet in spite of that, the fight does have some value. It is a big fight in the commercial sense.
It's a decent fight, decent-sized fight.
But the way this kid's talking, you'd think this fight between him and Gervonta is bigger than Maypac. And it isn't. You'd think it's bigger than Maymac. And it's not.
The way this kid's talking, you'd think that his fight with Gervonta Davis were going to bring in over 2 million pay-per-view buys.
Given the landscape and what's been going on, I'm starting to wonder if it can bring in at least 1 million pay-per-view buys. We'll see. Ryan Garcia continued by saying, so when I'm done with Gervonta, how about I break this robot.
He's talking about Vasyl Lomachenko, who's supposed to be fighting Devin Haney for the undisputed lightweight championship in the very near future, sometime in May.
For all alphabet titles in the lightweight division, in truth, I'm not holding my breath to see Ryan Garcia fight Vasyl Lomachenko, even if he beats Gervonta Davis, and even if Vasyl Lomachenko beats Devin Haney.
Even in a scenario like that, I don't know if that fight between Loma and Ryan would happen, because Ryan moved up to 140 pounds. The only reason he's fighting Gervonta at 136 is because they're making him.
That catch weight of 136 pounds, that stipulation, it came from the Gervonta Davis side of things. You know, if he beats Gervonta Davis...
Don't forget that Gervonta Davis has a rematch clause.
He may invoke it if Ryan Garcia knocks him out. If Ryan beats him, he may have to fight that guy for a second time, making all this Vasyl Lomachenko talk.
It's just talk.
He also had a few choice words for Naoya Inoue ahead of what's supposed to be Naoya Inoue's biggest fight, his biggest endeavor, his move upstairs to super bantamweight opposite the ring unified super bantamweight champion, Stephen Fulton. Ryan Garcia said, I think Inoue is not mainstream enough, but he should be.
Maybe. But you know what I think? I think Inoue is bigger in Japan than you are in America.
That's what I think, and I think that because, Naoya Inoue has played the crowds upwards of 20,000 in attendance, that size audience, whereas Ryan's never done that before. He hasn't done it in America. He hasn't done it anywhere.
So maybe he could stand to be a little bit more mainstream, but the same applies to Ryan.
The fight that Naoya Inoue is about to have in the land of the rising sun, that's a very big fight, and I'd wager that at minimum it rivals Ryan Garcia's fight with Gervonta Davis here in America, that the domestic interest for Inoue versus Fulton in Japan is the same, if not bigger than the domestic interest for Garcia versus Davis.
That your fight in America may seem bigger than his fight, but his fight in Japan, well, that seems bigger than your fight.
Domestically, to your respective domestic audiences in your respective backyards.
Your fight seems bigger than his to Americans. His fight seems bigger than yours to the Japanese.
I don't know what this fight is going to bring in at the box office. I don't know what kind of pay-per-view buys this is going to garner, because it's a less than opportune time to stage pay-per-views in the American market. You're battling piracy. You're battling a waning interest in boxing from the American boxing fans.
You're battling an oversaturated market where there's a pay-per-view almost every month.
Pay-per-views by way of the PBC and Showtime. Upcoming pay-per-views by way of ESPN Plus and Top Rank.
Pay-per-views everywhere. Thank God that the Zone doesn't have any on schedule. Not yet.
The consumer is inundated with fights that are hidden behind a paywall.
An expensive one, because nobody pays more for pay-per-views than we do. Nobody pays more for pay-per-views than Americans. We're paying 4 times as much as what the Brits pay.
It's not easy to sell a pay-per-view these days, and we have yet to determine if Ryan Garcia's hefty social media following can actually translate into buys, because he's never been on pay-per-view before. This is going to be his debut.
His first fight at the box office.
Gervonta Davis, well, he's been on pay-per-view approximately 5 times, but the size of his audience, it's not growing. His growth has plateaued.
This ain't the kind of guy that brings in 500,000 pay-per-view buys every time he gets out there. Gervonta Davis has yet to crack 300,000 pay-per-view buys with a fight.
And he's been on pay-per-view approximately 5 times. So there are questions as to how well, just how commercially well, this fight is going to do at the box office. They can do a good gate.
Yeah, they probably can.
But at the box office, what is this going to do?
What exactly?
I feel like the fight itself is a bit of a shortcut. A shortcut for Ryan and a shortcut for Gervonta Davis to be involved in a big fight, a big money fight, without taking on a champion, say a champion at 135 or a champion at 140. The issue is, beyond this fight,
when the smoke settles and it's all said and done, how many other fights like this one are out there for you?
Fights that don't require you to fight a belt holder, a titleist, a champion at either 135 or 140 pounds. You're not going to be able to do with every fight what you might do with this one commercially.
You want to downplay the significance of titles and champions.
When even if you beat Gervonta Davis, even if you beat him twice, even if you beat him both times, you may have to face a champion in order to fight in another big fight.
You might.
Even if this particular fight, allows you to skip that for now. It's a temporary fix, not a permanent one.
Comprendo, friendo.
Finally, in men's heavyweight news, the latest in the ongoing situation between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, what's supposed to be the fight between them. Fury seems to have lost his courage and lost his pen, according to Team Usyk's Sergey Lipine.
We're waiting on a contract, and so far, there seems to be no desire from Team Fury to make this fight happen. Fury seems to have lost his courage and lost his pen.
I don't know that Frank Warren, Queensbury, or even boxing as a sport, can afford to have this fight fall apart, because if things don't work out with Usyk, who are you going to sub him with?
There are only so many names out there that you can swap out Usyk for that still make for a big fight.
Those names are spoken for. Anthony Joshua's booked. He's fighting Jermaine Franklin April 1st. Joe Joyce is fighting later on that month, opposite the ring Zhilei Zhang.
Those are the only other two guys I can think of that if you put them in the ring with Tyson Fury, you've got a big box office fight.
A big fight, a big pay-per-view that does a big gate, big business.
Those are the only two.
What percentage of the boxing community would lay the blame for this fight's collapse at the feet of Tyson Fury? It's a bit hard to tell, but it looks like it would be a sizable portion, as there are corroborating rumors and reports.
Usyk isn't a prima donna. His fights aren't riddled with issues like Tyson Fury's.
Usyk is a guy who won every single belt he's ever won, every single belt he's ever fought for and defended. He's done all of this on the road. He's no prima donna. He's not a hard guy to deal with.
His fights aren't hard to negotiate.
Characteristically, he doesn't drive a hard bargain, but Tyson Fury does. Tyson Fury's fights characteristically always experience hiccups and issues, negotiations. They drag on.
It's going to be hard to convince people that Usyk is in any way at fault here when Bob Arum, Fury's own promoter, stated that Usyk had already accepted his end of the deal with the Saudis.
Most people are already convinced that if the fight ended up being relocated from Saudi over to the UK, it's because of the Fury people.
What's out there?
Reports indicating that Tyson Fury was offered only 70% of Anthony Joshua's last purse to fight the same fighter, Alexander Usyk, in the Middle East. That same fighter that just beat Anthony Joshua. That is a massive compliment to Anthony Joshua's star power.
Wait, you're saying that they offered Tyson Fury less than what they offered Anthony Joshua?
That's what the rumor mill is spinning, and those rumors are corroborated by Big John Fury, Tyson Fury's own father. Those reports are corroborated by what Big John Fury had to say about it.
He said something about money issues, too.
So many words. What he was saying is that they tried to lowball Fury. Eddie Hearn expressed a similar sentiment, stating that
It's a money thing. It's not as big a fight if Anthony Joshua isn't involved, and the real reason they moved it is because it's a money thing.
Fury doesn't like the money. But how could that be the issue when Bob Arum, Fury's own promoter here in the United States, stated quite plainly that the money in Saudi greatly exceeds the money in the UK?
What they were willing to pay.
The money from the real money from the fight, which will be the UK gate, the pay-per-view, the American pay-per-view, and the other revenue from foreign sales, will be very, very big as a fight, you know what I mean? But it pales by comparison to the Saudi money.
You heard what he said.
The UK money for the show pales in comparison to the Saudi money.
If Bob Arum is saying this and Bob Arum promotes Tyson Fury, then how could money be the issue?
Tyson Fury's issue, and the only way I can wrap my mind around it and reconcile it, is greed.
Plain old greed. He thought he was going to go over there and get the same or more than Anthony Joshua got when he ain't got the marquee value that Anthony Joshua's got. Corporate sponsorships, the appeal.
Even if he is a better fighter, or you think he's a better fighter than Anthony Joshua is, he ain't as marketable as Anthony Joshua is.
He's not.
So you don't like the money, you move the fight from Saudi over to the United Kingdom, and even still, there's a holdup, there's a delay.
What's the problem this time?
Money again. That's what the reports indicate.
There's no way this fight falls apart and people don't blame Tyson Fury.
If it falls apart, it'll be his fault.